What is going on, Internet? Lou here. It's been a little while. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today I am bringing you guys a video changelog, introduction, review. I don't know what the heck you want to call it, but I want to tell you guys about a project that I just started. It's my very first Samsung Galaxy Nexus kernel. So for those of you who have been following me for a little while, as far as my Android work is concerned, you know that when I was on the HTC Incredible, I not only made ROMs, but I also made kernels. The Thunderbolt, I did have a ROM, and I did start dabbling in kernels a little bit toward the end of my Thunderbolt time. But now that I'm on the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, I'm extremely excited to release kernels for this device. Now, let me start this by saying I aim for stability with all of my releases. If you're looking for a kernel with experimental features, this is not the kernel for you. If you're looking for the kernel that is overclocked to the max so you can get those crazy quadrant scores, this is not the kernel for you. Very quick, everyone has their own kind of vision for their own projects. Here's my vision. I want to make a smooth, stable kernel for everyday use. Okay, you're not going to get the highest quadrant scores with this kernel. You're not going to, I don't overclock. Okay, this is a 1.2 gigahertz dual core device. In my opinion, there's nothing that we're doing on our phones at this point that really requires overclocking. Now, if you're going to overclock your device, that means you want this thing pinned out for performance all the time. So you should be using a performance governor, overclocked, trying to kill the performance constantly. A lot of people don't do that. They overclock their device and they use, some, and no pun intended, but conservative governor. It kind of defeats the purpose of why you're even overclocking your CPU to begin with. So for me, I slimmed down this kernel. I try to optimize it as much as I could, and I set it up as far as the config the way that I think it would run really well for day-to-day use to provide a low latency experience and a really smooth use as far as usability is concerned. A very smooth experience. Swiping through home screens, entering and exiting applications, watching YouTube videos online, things like that, where you're going to notice the kernel in use. That's when I say usability, that's what I mean. I don't mean running a quadrant score, because quite frankly, I've tested out kernels before that have had quadrant scores through the roof, but they were choppy, they were jittery, they provided a terrible user experience because there were so many holes in the code. The thing basically crawled to a halt after a couple of days. Okay, that's not what I'm aiming for here with this kernel. Again, it's a very conservative kernel. It doesn't really kind of veer too far away from the stock Nexus kernel. At this point, all of my changes are done without adding any additional code to the kernel itself. There is some things that I'm looking at doing to the kernel again in future releases, but I will not veer away from stability. So hopefully, if you guys are running a 4.0.3 ROM, okay, there's a lot of AOSP ROMs out there now that are 4.0.3. This ROM is compatible. This kernel is compatible with that. It is. I'm testing it here myself. It is running extremely smooth, very, very nice. I like the build quite a bit. I've got a change log and a feature list on my blog. So for those of you who are familiar with my blog, hopefully you are already, I do have a specific post I'm going to be using for the Galaxy Nexus kernels. The code name for my Nexus kernel will be called Defiant. And this is my version 1. Alright, so basically, if you follow along here in the blog post, you're going to see this compatible with all 4.0.3 ROMs. I've enabled swap. For those of you who want to use it, there's some people that say it's really not necessary. That's fine, to each his own. It honestly does no harm by enabling it in the kernel. For those of you who want to use swap, you can do so. So swap is enabled. Again, for those Linux users out there, works the same way Linux swap does. So I've enabled swap in the kernel. I've optimized it for size. This compresses the kernel, makes a smaller kernel. Again, if you've watched my other kernel videos, a smaller kernel is a faster kernel, so I did optimize this for size. It's using the CFQ IO scheduler. Deadline is also built in if you decide that you want to use that, but by default it's using CFQ. I changed the default CPU frequency governor to on-demand. I personally prefer on-demand better than interactive, although if you look at the very next line, you'll see that under available CPU frequency governors, we've got power save, user space, interactive, on-demand, conservative, performance, and hot plug. Hot plug's a new addition. There's not a lot of documentation out there around the hot plug governor. From what I have gathered, it is basically functions very similar to on-demand. However, it optimizes both cores a little bit better. It is a little buggy at the moment. Nothing that I would go to by default, but it is in there. So if the Android kernel developers felt that it was good enough to keep in the kernel, I'll leave it in, and you guys can use your favorite market application to change your CPU governors if you want to. However, I do feel that on-demand does a really good job of providing a nice smooth experience as far as usability is concerned. So I went with on-demand. I've disabled kernel debugging. No need. We're not developing drivers for the kernel. We're not trying to bug any code. So by disabling kernel debugging, you're going to increase the performance of the kernel. And I've also gone through and disabled any other, debugging that's within the kernel that's really unnecessary. This should also increase the performance. And there's a couple other odds and ends that I did as well. So that's my very first release. Again, code name is Defiant. It's a V1 release. So hopefully you guys really like it. I will be doing one of these changelog feature reviews every time I update the kernel, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a different experience than reading these forum posts and entries on a blog here. This kind of just adds a little bit more of a dynamic. So, if you're using my kernel, leave a comment below. Let me know, how you like it, if it's giving you any issues. Again, make sure you wipe your Dalvik cache before you install this kernel. You're going to just put it on the root of your SD card. You're going to install it and flash it in recovery just as you would any other ROM. It's in a flashable zip package. It's using Cush's Any Kernel Updater, so I want to thank him for that tool. Also, the ROM that I am testing this on is Bugless Beast, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Bugless Beast, I suggest you check it out. It's made by a dev by the name of Peter Alfonso. You can find him on Twitter at Peter Alfonso. He's got a pure AOSP build of ICS 4.0.3. It's very nice. It's what I'm running currently right now. So shout out to Peter for Bugless Beast. Thank you for your work on that ROM. And it's one I'm testing my kernel out on as well. So anyway, guys, hope you like the kernel. Feel free to leave comments below. If you want to see me produce more Android kernels, if you want to see me even put together a Galaxy Nexus kernel tutorial video, please give the video a thumbs up. If the video can get to 100 thumbs up, then I will release that Galaxy Nexus kernel tutorial video. Guys, the more you let me know that you like this type of video, the more that I'll invest the time in making it, because these videos very rarely come out in one take, and it does take a lot of time to render them out afterward, and then my internet connection is pretty much rendered useless while I'm uploading these vids to YouTube because it takes up so much bandwidth. So it does take a lot of time to put these things together, and I want to make sure that there's enough people out there that are going to benefit from this video before I do so. So if this video can get 100 thumbs up, I will put that video together for you guys. We'll go through it step by step, very thoroughly, like I do with all my other tutorials, and before you know it, you guys will be compiling your own ice cream sandwich kernels for the Samsung Galaxy Nexus as well. So anyway, we'll see you guys later. Hope you enjoy.